Are you looking for a deep dive on this year's crop of rookie QBs? Do you want to get ahead of your league mates understanding which quarterbacks to target in this year's rookie drafts? Stick around as we dive into the strengths, weaknesses, and the fantasy outlooks of the big six quarterbacks of this year's draft class. Drake Maye, the prototypical 6'4", 230 pounds. Now, Kenny, I feel like this is one we're going to disagree on. I thought as an old school, size, arm strength kind of guy, you'd be a big Drake Maye fan. But I understand you're not the biggest Drake Maye fan in the world.
No, not at all. I'm much like you. Like going into this, I thought, well, this is the guy that I'm going to like. Clearly, we'd heard about him for a little while, and like you say, I'm a Snickers theory guy. The Warren Buffett story of he was asked after the financial crash, what are we going to do to rebuild? And he said, what's the most popular candy bar in America in 1962? And it was a Snickers. And he said, in 2008, what's the most popular candy bar? And it was still the Snickers. And he was saying that there's inbuilt things that will always be popular, and you focus on those things. And 6'4", 230 pound QBs with rocket arms, that should be it. But I don't see it. I'm not a fan. I think the hype is too much, goes too far for me, and I would be really wary about taking him, and I would be really wary about taking him as high as he's being projected at the moment, because I see a lot of holes that will make it hard for him to carry a team. But I mean, there are positives. For example, obviously his prototype size. He's a tough runner and a very good athlete. He obviously took on a lot because he was clearly the best player on the offense. I don't think I've seen a Division I college offense where it was just almost, it felt like at times, right, we'll snap him the ball and figure it out from there kind of thing. He hangs in the pocket well. But there were other, obviously, and there was some playmaking stuff. I don't know if you saw the film with the left-handed throw. That was pretty special. I'll give him that. But yeah. I also had a lot of problems. I think mechanically he needs some serious work. I almost felt like at times his upper body seemed to spend a lot of time fighting his lower body. I thought he didn't step into throws like I'd like to, but equally, he actually reminded me, and I don't know, maybe I'm getting drawn into the uniform, but he reminded me a bit of, I had the same problem with Sam Howell, that I felt like Sam Howell was just constantly throwing off his back foot, even when there was room in the pocket to step up. And this was obviously when we did this a couple of years ago. Sam Howell was sort of being talked about as maybe he sneaks into day one, maybe he's a day two kind of prospect. I know he fell to the fifth. I think that obviously I think he lacked trust in his receivers. But the biggest problem for me was he just missed a lot. He just missed a lot of throws. And I know that you probably will have defenders out there, and I think you're one of them, who will come on and say that, the line wasn't good. There were problems. He didn't have a reliable receiver. Quez Watkins wasn't quite what everyone hoped he would be, and I'll take that into there. But when I was watching his film, I just thought there were guys, like I said with Caleb Williams, I didn't see Caleb Williams getting many open looks. And I felt like when Drake Maye was getting some wide open looks, he wasn't taking them. And, as I said at the start of this, I'm happy to be wrong. I hope he goes on, and if he's drafted, wherever he's drafted, I hope he goes and has a successful career. But put it this way, he won't be someone. I've got the third pick in a couple of leagues that we're in. He won't be my third pick if he's still sitting there, kind of thing. So,
maybe I need to be coming and knocking on the door and seeing if I can steal that third pick away.
Absolutely, business, mate.
I think that for me there is one clear issue, and you mentioned it there. I think the footwork is a glaring red flag. I think that basically that footwork issue led to all of the other issues that you mentioned there. I think that when he sets his feet and when he throws with good footwork, he is highly accurate. And I think that he can make anticipation throws on time accurately. The problem is that there was far too many times and far too often where, as you said, his footwork didn't marry up with what was happening above the waist, and it led to inaccuracy issues. For me, I don't see that being a massive issue. I think that is the kind of thing that can be worked in off season. I think we're probably going to see that he is working with some sort of QB guru right now. I think that any team is going to rebuild his footwork and be able to coach that out. And I think that I'm viewing him as, if we eliminate throws where he throws with poor footwork, I think he is a phenomenal prospect. Now, I appreciate I have just cut out probably about 60% of his throws in college last year, because it is very often that he throws with poor footwork. But I think his processing ability, I think, is probably the best in this class. I think you see the ability for him to push the ball downfield consistently, but not take chances that lead to picks. And some of that is a little bit of luck, let's be honest. He did get a few dropped interceptions and things like that. But he seems to understand the time and place for, right, I need to go and make a play now, versus I need to be slightly more sensible. And I think that's a really innate skill that people underestimate in the NFL. And I think that, you look at Drake Maye's not Patrick Mahomes, but you look at Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes seems to understand the situation, the game, where we're at, how much of a risk do I need to take here? And I think Drake Maye's got that. And I think that, look, this is a guy that's a better athlete than anybody talks about. He is a better scrambler than Caleb Williams. He has the prototypical size, phenomenal arm talent. He can make every throw in the NFL. And I think that combined with the processing ability, for me, is enough to overcome the footwork. Now, is there a world where Drake Maye completely falls apart and is a bust because he doesn't sort the footwork out? Yes, absolutely. But I just think that where we're at in the NFL, where we're at with the kind of the QB coaches in the offseason things, I think that will get and can get worked on. So it's a little bit of projection with Drake Maye, but I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, and I'm happy to take that risk.
Yeah, I'm not. You're not persuading me around on this. I think I can see what you're saying about that, but there was also a lot of times when, for example, there were problems with fumbles, and I noticed he dropped the ball in the pocket. Like, I don't mean literally dropped it. I mean, it would hold the ball lower than you would ideally want a quarterback while they're waiting to pass, and just he has slightly elongated motion. It can be almost a bit stuttery at times and things like that. And I just think there was a lot of problems there to me, and I know the NFL is going to love him, because the NFL, most teams are like these women that, want to marry bad boys and stuff, where they believe they can change him because the raw tools are there. They are, he's 6'4", 230, and he can absolutely gun it when he wants to. I didn't think he threw a particularly impressive deep ball. And again, he didn't necessarily get a chance to, and it might not have been within the offense. And I'm going in. I mean, I'm always reluctant to put too much weight on rushing with some of the QBs, just because I think we had it when we talked about Trey Lance, wasn't it? He's playing in the ACC, and there's obviously some NFL players that he's been going up against, but there's a lot of guys that aren't, that will never see an NFL field. So, it's a whole different ball game, running wise. And I don't know if he's an elite runner personally. He's obviously mobile. He's obviously a good athlete, but I don't know if he's going to be an elite runner. And then, like I say, I feel like there's a lot to fix there. And I also worry if he's gonna go 2 or 3. I mean, for example, say he goes 3 to the Pats, there ain't much there that's going to be helping him. And I would just feel like, we've seen it, as you know very, very, very well, Rich. If a QB gets thrown into a situation where there's not a lot of talent around him, it can break him pretty quick. And that would be my big deal with him.
I think with the rushing, I think people talk about rushing as if it's one thing. I think for me, talking Caleb Williams and Drake Maye is a perfect example of how rushing is very different. Caleb Williams was used and is competent as a schemed rushing quarterback. He is used in the QB run game. He is used on kind of zone reads, that kind of thing. He scrambles very rarely. Drake Maye is the complete opposite. He was used occasionally in the QB run game around the line of scrimmage, but he very rarely was used on designed runs. Nearly all of his rushing yardage and production came on scrambles. And I think for me, unless you're going to be, and we'll come on to one of those quarterbacks in a minute, a Lamar, a Kyler, a Jaden Daniels, a Jalen Hurts, where you're such a phenomenal rusher that we're going to rely on that. I almost think that I would prefer a scrambler over someone like Caleb Williams, because I don't think Caleb Williams is going to add very much rushing production at all in the NFL, because I
Right.
don't think a team is going to, he's not a good enough rushing quarterback to be used in the QB run game, and therefore he doesn't scramble. So I don't think he'll get much rushing production. Whereas Drake Maye, I think will be, because of his size, he will be used in and around the goal line. And because of that scrambling ability, he's not going to have massive rushing production, but I think he could easily put up 300, 350 yards, which is an extra, 35 points on a year. That's the difference between, potentially a back end QB2, QB1, and a sort of a mid QB1. I think that's more reliable than the rushing production someone like Caleb Williams will potentially put up, and that's where I'm, I guess, a little bit more excited about Drake Maye's rushing upside than someone like Caleb Williams.
Yeah, maybe, but I think that's, I don't know. I would worry enough about, I think we've talked about this, that you've got to be a good enough passer to stay on the field. And I've got my doubts about that side of it. I take what you're saying about the rushing. I mean, I think he's more of a, he struck me more as a Josh Allen runner, but I don't think he's quite as quick, and I didn't seem quite as fearless.
He's not the athlete.
No. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm always, when I'm low on these guys, I'm always hope that I'm wrong, because I want them to go and have good careers. And, like I say, the more good QBs, the better. But he's one that, I don't think he'll be ending up on any of my teams. I think that he'll be getting picked by other people.
Yeah, well, it all comes down to that footwork. I think that's the key thing. I think if he can, resolve that fairly glaring issue, I think there's some potential hope there. If not, he's probably going to struggle.